Sara Griffin, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. Welcome back, I should say. Welcome back because we interviewed you for our blog a while ago, maybe a couple years ago. And I know a lot has evolved in your career since our last conversation. I have to say, I have enjoyed watching your career grow over the years. You've been a nutrition support dietitian in an ICU setting and an instructor at a community college. You're also now a certified nutrition support clinician. And I too was one back in the day. It had a different term. I was a CNSD. I was a dietitian versus a clinician. So when I first started working, so I love all the calculations. But you are also an entrepreneur on the side, which I always love hearing people's work and their journey to that and how they run their business and be able to share that with other dietitians. So you have a business that helps other dietitians become more clinically confident and help them pass the CNSC exam. And my goodness, that has grown. That has like really exploded over the last few years or recently even. And we'll talk about that. But I also want to sort of preface this conversation. You and I both have a love of talking about dietitian salaries, compensation. We'll get into that as well. But for our audience, can you give us a little brief review about your professional background and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off as a clinical dietitian. I wanted to work in community and food service and was determined to do that, but I just fell in love with my clinical rotation. It was the last one, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I got my preceptor's job actually as an RD eligible, and I passed my exam, and I've been at this facility for 10 years. So February actually will be 10 years. I love patient care. I love the clinical work. I think pretty early on, two areas of practice, maybe three stood out to me. Back then, we rotated on all the units. So even as a new dietitian, I got to see everything. And I always loved GI, oncology, and ICU. And so I kind of had to decide at one point what is going to be my bread and butter. And I decided to go for nutrition support and get the CNSC. So I did my master's online while I was working full time in 2019 and 2020. And then I got my CNSC in 2019 and then just recertified it in 2024. So it's an excellent credential to have. I recommend it to everybody who wants to really double down in the nutrition support area or even the clinical area if you want to make more money as a clinical dietitian. CNSC is a great place to start.
So tell us a little bit about your company.
Edge Clinical Nutrition. So I started my company in 2020. I had intended to build a course for my own interns at the facility that I worked because I took a lot of interns. I love precepting, I love teaching, and my interns really struggle, not just mine, but in general, interns really struggle with nutrition support. It's not usually a big part of undergraduate programs. And if it is, it's often taught by somebody who hasn't touched patients in 10 or 15 years.
Oh, that's very
So,
interesting. I did not know that. Does that
yeah.
make a difference whether it's a rural setting or an urban setting or a teaching
So
hospital?
it, of course, in your rotations, many people do get experience with nutrition support, but in the undergraduate DI programs, I find that a lot of them are under preparing students for nutrition support. It's just not a huge area of focus. And then, if you never got taught how to write a PN and then you get thrown into this rotation and your preceptor expects you to be able to know that and you don't, you just have a lot
Mm.
of catch up work to do. It also was the number one area that my students reported that they feel not confident in because nutrition support is probably the area of nutrition that requires the most math. And many of us are not, we didn't get into the profession because we love math. So it's an area that a lot of people struggle in doing those calculations for tube feeding and PN.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful. So that sounds like a good lead into why you created this business. So tell us
Yeah.
about what your offerings are currently.
Yeah, so I had kind of pieced together a bunch of different resources for my students and found that the Aspen materials at the time, and I would say very much still to this day, this is the case. The Aspen materials are great, but they're for advanced clinicians. They're really not appropriate for dietetic interns because they don't explain all the background information that you need to know. And they assume that you know a lot of information. And so for dietetic interns, the Aspen resources are just too much for them. So I had created a bunch of material, and then my husband was kind of like, you should just sell this, turn it into a course and sell it. And this was pandemic time, so we had nothing else going on. And so I thought like, oh, what the hell? I'll just make a website and just do it. I didn't invest any money. I just threw up a brief website and started promoting on Instagram. And there was just such an excitement about this. And it really proved to me that there was such a gap in our industry and a real big lack of a nutrition support course that teaches nutrition support, not like just guidelines and presenting guidelines like a webinar like the Aspen Core, but actually going through and teaching and lecturing and explaining all of the math and all of the background as if you had like a preceptor sitting next to you. So that was the goal of my course, is to make it feel like I was sitting next to you during the process and teaching you every single thing.
So you've got courses or a webinar, and you've
Yeah.
got more than that too. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so now I have my original CPE course. It's called the Nutrition Support Skills course, and it teaches all aspects of nutrition support. So you would find everything that you would find in the Aspen courses, like the fundamentals course, the Dietitians on Demand course. Those types of things are included in my course. But the thing that really makes it stand out is I have a lot of extra content. So I have a lot of information on ethics, advocating for the profession, how to make more money, like things that you're not going to find in a traditional CPE course. And I teach you all the math, which almost no other course does. A lot of courses skip that part because it's hard, and I teach you the math. So I have a tube feeding calculation cheat sheet and a PN calculation cheat sheet that teaches you step by step how to do the math the same way every time. And then I have over 12 hours of video lectures. So that's really the bulk of the CPE content, is a video lecture where I'm teaching. As you know, I have a lot of teaching experience at this point. I'm teaching the student. So I
Yeah.
sell that product now all over the world. I've sold over 500 products combined with my study guide and my course.
Sarah,
I have
that's
11.
fantastic. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah, and I just shipped to
Congratulations.
my 11th country this week. So
Oh,
it's a
wow.
global
Okay.
brand.
And are these countries that have reciprocity within the United States, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter. So the CPEs, of course, I'm a CDR certified CPE provider. And so as far as students in the US, they can use these CPEs, but they translate to other places. So I sell a lot of courses in Canada. I've sold courses in the Middle East, in Singapore, um, all over the US, including Hawaii and Guam. I actually have a student who just took her CNSC, and she'll be the first CNSC in Guam.
Awesome.
That's exciting. Yeah.
That's
And
really good.
so my second product is my CNSC exam study guide.
A
So
study
that I
guide. Okay.
started selling last year in 2025. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a study guide for the CNSC exam. There are a couple other products on the market that do prepare students for the CNSC exam. However, they're pretty different. They're digital, and my product is physical. I really feel like it's important for students to have a physical
Mm-hmm.
binder, 100 pages of content that they can highlight. They can write their own notes. And it's not just that, it's flashcards, practice exams, a digital study group, live Zoom study sessions, one-on-one support with me, all of that stuff.
Sarah, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you did that. Making our profession more competent and can give us more confidence. There's a lot of benefits to getting a certification, which we'll go into. As you know, I always like sort of behind the scenes, like how the sausage is made.
Mhm.
Tell us about, you and I were talking a little bit about what it's like to run a business, to be an entrepreneur. A lot of what goes into running a business is not just the product that you're selling, but reaching your audience and marketing to your audience and helping people find out about your product. And you've got something really great to sell, and you just need to have people discover it. So give us a little behind the scenes on what type of like marketing you do, how you based your success. I'm pretty sure we could figure that one out. But if you've got anything interesting in there or feedback or anything else you can share behind the scenes for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, when I started my company, I didn't have any seed money. So, I didn't really invest any money or get any investors. And I did everything on my own. And I had an abundance of time. So, I was willing to do that at that time. Initially, my marketing strategy was I'm going to do whatever is cheapest. And that happened to be Instagram because it's free. And then to a lesser extent, LinkedIn, and of course, email and things like that. And Instagram still to this day is one of the number one places that I get sales from.
Oh, good.
So I'm just looking now at my numbers. 28% of my total sales come from Instagram.
Oh, great. Okay, that's awesome. And that is a direct link or a link tree in your bio, or do you use ManyChat or some other automated? link to getting back over to your website, which is the hub of your business?
Yeah, it's traditionally always been link in bio. And this year, because my company has just exploded so much, there's just so much volume, I can't keep up with it. So I do have ManyChat now, which sends a direct link to the sales page.
I love ManyChat. I love using it too. Great. Okay, that's good. Any other types of program software, sort of applications, the background that you use that you think might be of interest? So you use ManyChat, you use Instagram, of course.
Mhm.
You've got the link in bio. Anything else that you think might be interesting to us?
I use Canva, Excel, and Kajabi every day. So Kajabi is the place where I host my course, and my study guide also has a digital course component. And Kajabi is also where I get my sales. So my sales page is there. People purchase on my Kajabi site. They log in on Kajabi. Everything happens there. It's fabulous. They also send marketing emails, and my sales funnels are through Kajabi. So I spend a lot of time on Kajabi. I use Excel for things like forecasting and keeping track of inventory and things like that. And then Canva is what I primarily use for making graphics.
Ah, that's really helpful. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing about how you are using Kajabi. I have never used it. I use a different platform for my courses, so that's helpful for people. I know that they also have affordable sort of entry level getting into the using the application. So I think it's
Hmm.
got some great use cases for dietitians who are wanting to enter into the entrepreneurial world as well.
Yes, Kajabi is great. Just as an aside for people who are listening, I was not convinced that I needed to use an expensive platform like that. I had always hosted my course on WordPress with a plugin, but it was just not a great customer experience. It's very clunky. Sometimes the plugins would break. It required a lot of maintenance. I paid $2,000 for a year of Kajabi, and that year, 2025, my sales increased by 11 times.
Perfect. I think that's a really great lesson that sometimes it takes a little bit of upfront money, not a lot, but a little bit upfront, and hopefully that can improve the user experience, improve the sales, improve and help out with your marketing, or actually make marketing if it's not been done before. So that's a great use case scenario where that can be very helpful for somebody trying to improve their business and build their business. So thank you for that. I think that sort of goes into my next big topic that I'm super interested in talking with you about. And I think what others would like to hear too is you and I talked about how there are different ways in which dietitians can make more money. One of which is by getting a certification, an
Hmm.
advanced certification, whether you're a certified diabetes educator or you are a certified nutrition support clinician, which is your focus area. And so you have also had a big interest in raising the conversation about dietitian salaries and compensation. So do you have some perspective on certification and salaries for dietitians?
Absolutely. I feel like I could talk about this all day.
Let's do it.
Definitely a passion project of mine. And it's why there's a whole module in the course about advocating for yourself and advocating for the profession. That's not work that the academy is going to do for us. It's something we have to do for ourselves. And I think it's so important that we do it for others. So, as preceptors, we have to build up dietitians and empower them with these skills because they're not learning it in their classes. They might be learning it in their masters, and I know a few internships who incorporate salary discussions now, which is great, but it's very uncommon for them to be taught any of this. So I always really, really encourage people to think forward and backwards. It's not just for you, but look behind and who's coming up behind you in the profession. That's the only way we're going to move the needle on salaries is if new dietitians start making more money. So yeah, I mean, as far as the Academy survey, which I know it was published in 2024. Do you know when they did the survey? Was it 21? Or did they
For the
get?
2024 data, it was done in 2023, so it was pretty close
Okay.
to
Okay.
when which they're getting better at having the data be closer to when it's reported so that there's not this big 2+
Hmm.
year lag or delay in what dietitians are reporting. And so that's the last one that we have available to us. I know that there's a few people that are pinging the academy and asking when the next one's coming out. I think they were doing a survey and I think it's forthcoming. They like to be able to publish their compensation report every 2 years because
Mhm.
it's a big validated report that's done, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. I have not participated in one in a long time. I did one quite a while ago, but I have not been asked to participate in a salary survey recently, which is too bad because I feel like why haven't I been queried to participate in the survey? I think that's kind of a lead in to like you and I can talk about what the numbers are, but I think it's a
Mhm.
lead in to talking about the website, the sister website that I created a couple years ago, and that is dietitiansalaries.com, which is meant to be an informal, anonymous salary survey. It's not validated, but it's an active, ongoing salary database. Dietitians who are participating, students, interns, currently working dietitians, retired dietitians, the gamut. And then from that, I just recently developed the salary calculator where you can isolate out different factors, different labels of data if you want to sort by location, if you want to sort by whether someone or not is in the academy, and you will then get an extrapolated average of a 40-hour week because not all people work 40 hours. So just to get an extrapolated data point of what that looks like. And so both you and I were looking at the academy's information, but also with dietitian salaries, again, which is not validated, but it's very useful. There are a lot of participants. I think with the last Academy's compensation report, I believe there were close to 4 or 5,000. I should know this off the top of my head. Participants in it. The N was like, let's say 5,000. My N currently, I think, is about 30, close to 3,300 participants in it. Again, this includes students, interns, retired, plus all of the people that are in the database that are working. So we've got some interesting numbers. I thought it would be fun to share. You and I can
Mhm.
talk about them because we've been looking at them. And I think it's going to be really obvious, which is why
Yeah.
you and I are talking. So I have the numbers in front of me. I looked them up before we got onto our interview here. So a dietitian, with no other labels onto that is the average extrapolated salary out to a 40-hour work week is about $82,000. So $82,000, $600 actually. And that number is 3,219 participants. Okay, so 8,200 a year. So somebody who is an RD plus the CNSC exam certification, they are certified in that. Their salary is 87,000 and about 800. And that was actually a large number of people in that sample. Those people were making about $5,000 more than people who do not have that certification. There were close to 300 people in that sampling. So, what do you make of that? I think that's great, actually.
I think that's great. I'm not surprised. I will say the Academy, their Academy salary survey. Now, it's important for the listeners to kind of realize the minutia of this. The Academy survey was done in 2023 last, and Stacey, I've just listened to this great podcast that you recorded with Katie Dodd of Dietitian Side Hustle. It's number 249 for the listeners. You should go back and actually listen to that as well. It's fantastic. They talk about different things than we are today. But back then, and that was recorded, I believe last year, you had 2,000 participants, and now you have 3,300. So
I
that's
know.
very, very recent
Yeah,
data
these are
that you're
this is
getting.
all recent data. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up because with the salary database, I am capping the entries just for the past year. So they're always going to be sort of shifting to the current, right? They're not going to be old entries back from when the survey was published back in, I want to say it was like a couple years ago. So right when I
Mhm.
probably spoke with Katie. So yeah, I know it's very
Mhm.
exciting
So I would say the relevance of your survey, even though sample size is smaller, if you want to know what dietitians are making today, I
today.
think that your numbers could be more accurate.
That could very well
Mhm.
be. It is interesting. So we have the salary calculator, which can give us some really fun stuff to work with. There's also the database where you can look at individual responses. They're all anonymous, so you can participate anonymously and people can also check in and see what that person has entered. it does include their specific job title. So I think that is also interesting to see. That's something that's lacking in the
Mhm.
Academy's survey because they just do the analysis a little bit differently. It's validated. So I have the specific job titles, which I always find fascinating. So be
Mhm.
curious. I should have pulled this up as well. How many dietitians have the word nutrition support in their
Mhm.
title? Or it could be, every hospital is different. It could be a senior clinician, or it could have some other nomenclature that signifies or denotes that they are working in this patient population. So I like to reiterate based on my data, these people are making about $5,000 more annually compared with those who are not people who are certified as a nutrition support clinician. So that's exciting.
Mhm. It's very exciting. And the Academy in their survey, it was 80,000, and you're saying 85, 87,
87.
87. So that's the difference could just show that dietitians are making more
They're
now in
making more.
20s. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
That could
excellent.
be. The other thing that was interesting is that I also took a look at dietitians who have a certification in nutrition support and our academy members
Mhm.
continue to make even more money, $14,000 more than a dietitian who does not have any certification or who is not a member. So I thought that was very interesting. And there were about 103 people in this sample, and they made $96,450 extrapolated annually. So that's again 14,000 more.
Why do you think that is, that Academy membership gets you more money?
Well, it could be a variety of things. It could be that and this goes back to why are people academy members and why are they not? I think
Mhm.
a lot of people who are working in a traditional setting, let's say they're working for a major teaching hospital, that hospital, they might be employed by a contract food service company who is paying for a whole bunch of stuff in addition to their salary. They're also paying for the certification process, but they're also paying for their academy dues or paying towards professional dues, and they opt to be academy members. I think that's one way to look at it. I would like to go in and take a peek at what each person is doing, maybe where they're located. That's only
Mhm.
103 samples to look at and see more about what they look like. I don't know who
Mhm.
these people are, but I could see where they live or where they're working, and maybe
Mhm.
what the name of the hospital is or the company that they're working at. Maybe some of these are infusion dietitians as well. It tell us a lot of information.
It's fascinating. I also wondered, just when I initially looked at your numbers, I wondered if that meant, people who are, I think a lot of students will be Academy members for that first couple years when it's cheap. And then a lot of us kind of drop off. And then, once you find a niche, like once you want to be a nutrition support dietitian, get your CNSC, you might become an Aspen member for 10 years. You might not be able to do both. Or you find more value from the Aspen membership than the Academy membership. And then people who are in academia or in private practice and want to join some of these dietetic practice groups, like these are the higher earners in our industry. And I wonder if those folks are getting, even if they let their membership lapse for 10 or 15 years, maybe they're getting it again later in their career. So they're just more, it might be more representative of like an advanced career dietitian
Great.
membership.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And remind me, how many years does the certification hold? Is it 5 years
5.
or 5 years
Mm-hmm.
still? Okay.
Yep.
So then you and I took a look at another variable and to see what impact the year's experience someone's had. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of interesting discussion that can come from this. What I found was so I looked at RD plus a member of the academy,
Mm-hmm.
plus being certified as a nutrition support clinician, plus 10 to 14 years of experience. There were about 16 of these people, and they earned an extrapolated annual average salary was $105,000, 280, I'm sorry, 105 $105,265.
Mm.
I
Wow.
think I'd get
It's a
better at
lot.
like saying salaries. And that's a jump of $22,000 compared to someone who's
Yeah.
just who is a RD. minus all of the other variables. So that's interesting. I look to see what it looks like if someone's been working for 20 years, 20 plus years, and the income starts going back down. So it looks like it peaks
Mm.
around 10 years and just under
Hmm.
20 years, and then it starts to fall back again. And that could be a chapter in life if someone's
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
working full time, or they're not working as many hours. They're working in a different sector. They no longer maybe can hack the ICU or NICU experience. In some urban teaching hospitals, they're seeing, you know better than me, but upwards of, 15, 16 people
Mhm.
a day.
Mhm.
That's a lot. Even if you
Yeah.
can't talk to them, that's still a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at some of these job titles. I love that your salary survey includes that, which the academies doesn't. But some of these high earners in clinical nutrition, regional nutrition manager of home infusion, clinical dietitian specialist, travel critical care dietitian. If you didn't know, you could be a travel dietitian and earn really good money. Could be fun for a certain stage of your life.
Yeah.
Also, we see our clinical nutrition managers and directors making that money. And so this isn't sort of a clock in, clock out, 8 hours a day and you go home type of job. Some of these have, they're managing budgets, they're managing people. So these are sort of those higher level jobs that require more time, more experience, and more pressure, of course.
Well, this actually describes one of my last clinical positions. And like you, I love, love, love clinical. I love a hospital setting. I love the whole thing. I think I love the idea of the pit. It was really
Mhm.
fun. I was the clinical nutrition manager at a smaller community hospital. We had, I believe, 5 FTE dietitians plus myself, or maybe 4, somewhere in that number. And I was the only person that was certified as a nutrition support dietitian at the time. So I also, in addition to my managing the dietitians, managing some of the food service workers and some of the tray line people and being on a bunch of committees, I was also the one that went up to the ICU and to the NICU and did some charting up there as well and working with those patients. So that might describe some of those people working in those more community based or rural based facilities.
3 jobs. I mean, you're doing clinical, you're doing management, and you're managing food service. That's
Yeah.
3 jobs.
But I really liked a lot of it. And I think that kind of goes back to, why do we want to become nutrition support certified in the first place? Well, we can make more money. But it's also, I think it's a very exciting place to be. You're on the forefront of medicine and hearing what's going on with all different disciplines. Maybe we can get your perspective.
Absolutely. I think the CNSC is really incredible because it's multidisciplinary. So if you didn't know, there used to be different exams for dietitians, nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. Now it's all one exam. The
Oh, thank you for
credential,
that.
yeah, it's a credential that crosses territory. And so it does have, I think, an additional strength to it as compared to something that's maybe just a credential that only dietitians can get. For example, something the academy might offer that other practitioners are not really familiar with. So the AP credential is a really good example of this. Like people in other professions can get an advanced practice credential. And I think the CNSC and AP are similar in that they showcase our value in a way that other professionals understand. Like I have colleagues who are pharmacy colleagues that have their CNSC. And so a lot of people may not know exactly what a dietitian does, but if you have someone who's a CNSC, they know exactly how hard that exam was. And the exam that we're taking has physician, pharmacy, and nursing level questions on it. So it's not just dietitian level competency. It's a really, really challenging exam. So I think for personal reasons, a lot of people personally, it becomes a goal that they want to be able to say that I passed this extremely challenging exam. Not all places will pay you more immediately after getting your CNSC, but I think it is, and correct me if you have a different experience, I think it's more common to see someone with a CNSC and without their CNSC, you could beat somebody out for a job.
Oh, for sure. I mean, absolutely. I always say, the initial pass at getting a job interview in the first place is all about keywords, right?
Mhm.
What are the keywords or keyword sentences inside of your resume? Not so much on your LinkedIn profile yet, but on your resume, if they are trying to hire somebody who has a CNSC or who has some experience working in critical care and they see that, they know that, HR knows that in an urban setting or in a hospital setting, a clinical setting, that you're gonna be able to get into that position a lot earlier into the hiring process and probably move down the line a lot quicker. I think that's really a great point that you brought up and very relevant to how dietitians can stand out during the job application process. Because the truth is, we're all pretty awesome as
Hmm.
dietitians, and there are different ways that we can stand out a little bit amongst this amazing shiny crowd, and having some advanced certification is certainly a way to do that. So I think that's good. I know you've got a robust community of clinicians that you have conversations with. And what are you hearing on your end about salary or compensation or questions that they have?
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of chatter about it online. I will say it sort of depends on which platform you're on. Facebook is a little different than LinkedIn these days and is different than conversations I might have privately with people
Reddit has
or
a
Reddit.
lot of conversation as well. That's a
Yeah.
good spot for it.
Yes. And it's all very transparent, which I think I've just noticed a big shift in the last 5 to 10 years about people being much more willing to talk about money when maybe back in the day it was more taboo. And I think that's a really positive change. So people are excited about it. I think the one thing that I consistently keep seeing is there just is a lot of pressure on the academy to make some moves. And I'm curious what you think about this. I've always sort of wondered if it's worth sitting around waiting for the academy to do something or if we really just need to empower ourselves.
Well, I think the academy is going to look at one element, sort of the foundation to any of our reimbursement, and that will be lobbying for what gets included in insurance reimbursement, right? So that will trickle up into other areas, into entrepreneurship, into working in the media as spokespeople. The value just sort of builds up from there. So I don't think that necessarily the academy is going to help me build out my business, but I do feel like it's going to help start with the foundation of where we can begin to get reimbursed more. It just raises a lot of the tides, as you
Hmm.
speak, that I think that could be very helpful. I agree with you. I don't think it's important to wait for the academy. I know that there's a lot of conversation about that. And there have been a lot of conversations recently and in the past, and you can read about those. But, the academy is not a labor union. It's a professional association, and it does credential us, of course. But I think some of the work might have to be done in addition to what the academy can do for us.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important to, be listening to podcasts like this and invest in your own expertise or your own job coaching and things like that. Like this is not, in my opinion, the scope of the academy to really help each individual practitioner make more money. They're not going to be in the office with you telling HR to pay you more. You really have to gain those skills on your own. The academy, as you mentioned, does a lot of policy work, which I think we forget about. I'm super involved in policy, which is a little embarrassing to admit, but they do a lot of policy work and they fund a lot of research. So I was a principal investigator for it was called the Malnutrition Clinical Characteristics Study. I think they changed the name. But during the pandemic, we started at my facility, we signed on to this project and the academy was funding this study, which it's really been like the publication of the research has been tremendously slowed down because the pandemic required us to, our enrollment rates were just so terribly low.
Mm.
But the goal of that was really to connect dietitian staffing to malnutrition diagnosis and prove to healthcare facilities how valuable we are and how much money we earn for the profession. And so I think a lot of that data has come out already, but some of it is forthcoming. And this is not something that most dietitians, I think, even know. But I think that kind of stuff is so important because we mention things like, oh, dietitians diagnose PCM and malnutrition in the patient setting, and we're so valuable. But to actually connect that with a number, like how much each FTE dietitian can earn for the hospital from malnutrition diagnoses alone, I think is really, really powerful.
Well, as you talked about, malnutrition coding is a really important element that is on the viewpoint of the academy, that is an important element for clinicians to be able to speak to at hospital settings or to the contract food service companies about getting a higher reimbursement rate. And the last couple annual conferences at Fancy, there's been a lot of people coming forward and showing what they have done with their electronic medical record with Epic or MyChart, all these different electronic medical record systems that help them document malnutrition. And they have shown how they can increase the number of FTEs, the number of dietitians that are able to work at that facility. So it may not be that they're always getting a pay raise, but they are able to lessen their workload, which makes life going into the job a whole lot nicer and more fun to be at. Some places are able to pay the dietitians more, and some places are able to also then increase the number of FTEs. So I think that is also on the academies, what they're thinking about for the future. And that is how we can work with what we have currently and more of the hospital administration on board with malnutrition reimbursement. First coding for it, identifying, working with all the hospital team members that are involved in that process, and then making sure that that gets into IT, that the coding is properly processed. So I think that's important too. I think a lot of information that I'm hearing from dietitians who are not so happy about their positions or their salaries is related to the geography. And I know that you and I have been talking about that as well. Dietitians who, and you can look at the salary surveys from the compensation report the Academy provides or with my salary calculator, dietitians who work in urban locations, San Francisco, for example, I look to see like what does a dietitian who is certified nutrition support, who's a member of the academy, what is that person making? It over $120,000 a year, right? It costs a lot to live in San Francisco, but I think that's an important element too. The other thing I was going to mention when I first was testing out the waters to see whether or not anybody was interested in an anonymous salary survey that would not be validated, that would have job title, salary, location, etc., a few things. I went to one of the conferences. You may have heard me say this before, everybody, but went to a conference, had my booth talking about nutrition jobs at the trade show, and had a little aside QR code that said, if you are interested in participating in this anonymous salary survey, just go ahead right there and enter it. And I was expecting people to like log that QR code and then go off and do it later on in their hotel room. I had a pile of people standing in front of my table taking the salary survey, laughing, having a good time, super excited, happy with like little fox eyes, like super excited to share their high salary. Some were sad eyes and wanted to share their sad salary. But I was shocked at the number of people that were super excited to share their salaries. So not all
That's great.
dietitian salaries are bad or low. I agree that they can be increased, but just know that there's a lot of opportunity. So I think that's sort of a long-winded way of saying, hey, dietitians, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's ways to make more money as dietitians.
Absolutely. I have some thoughts on that if you're okay with me jumping in for a minute.
Please.
A lot of my followers have expressed similar concerns, like, hey, 85K. I mean, I work in Mississippi. I don't make anywhere close to that. Here's what I would say. You can use the salary calculator to figure out exactly what people are making in your area. You can also look at the Academy salary survey if you're a member, because it does split it out by region. And then I would say if you're making substantially less than median, like the 50th percentile, I think you need to start looking for a new job.
I agree. It's time to get a new job. There are so many jobs. I feel like there's this perception that we're in uh, that there aren't enough jobs out there for
Mhm.
dietitians, and that is just not the case. It may not be exactly, where you want to live or what you want to do, but there are a lot of options.
For sure. And even, I mean, seriously, if you've been working at a facility for 3 or 5 years and you're just really below that 50th percentile, you're not going to make more money by staying for another 5 years. You could make more money by getting your CNSC and then going and applying at maybe the academic medical center in in your town. You might not even have to relocate. You can look at some hybrid jobs or online jobs, which typically pay more. But I think this can be a good, it can be a pain point for us when we see like, oh man, I'm not making anywhere close to that. But I think it can also be a wake up moment because if you're not talking about salary with your coworkers or people in your area, you might not have any idea how underpaid you are. And strongly recommend looking for other positions because when you make that jump to a new facility, you can probably make more right out the gate.
For sure. I think you can typically expect to make 3 or 4% annual increase in your current
Mhm.
job, but you can probably make 8 to 10% plus, and even higher when you move into a new position as well. That's often been
Yeah.
documented.
You and Katie talked about this on the podcast, so I won't reiterate that. So go listen to that if you want more information about like how to ask for more, what to ask for more, what fringe benefits to ask for. But one thing I want to mention is I was a full-time clinical dietitian for many years, as you know, at the very beginning, and I did not get paid well, but the fringe benefits were really good. So we were classified as managers. We got 30 days of PTO plus holidays and sick days and some other pot of vacation. I think I had 45 days off a year, which was unheard of. And that allowed me to start my business on the side without taking any time off of my full-time job. They also had really good healthcare benefits, which have gone up substantially in the last 5 years. And so, the value of having healthcare benefits, okay, those types of things. I know when we see the number, don't just think about that one number. You could be in a job with unparalleled flexibility that allows you to have a side gig or allows you to raise your kids or travel or do other things that you want to do in your life. And so we kind of have to choose. I think it's important for us to write down maybe our top three goals. Like there were times in my life when my goal was to make the most money I could. And now at this point in my life, it's to have the best work-life balance that I can.
Exactly. I had a job working for a contract food service company for just a couple years, a well-known company. They offered a very low salary. They offered tremendous, ridiculous, amazing benefits. I
Mm.
had so many benefits, like all the paid time off, all the reimbursement for dues, etc. They also had a matching 401k. And I was just looking at what this was back in my 20s. And I
Mm.
was just looking at what I still have this 401k. It's still cooking
Mm.
away. And it is, you guys, it's high, high, high six figures from just a couple years of working for this company in my really low paying job. So I know that wasn't going to help me buy a car back in, 1990, but it's certainly gonna help in my future. It is money, it is cash. It is available for me, so that's a good perspective on it too.
Absolutely. And you should be asking your hiring manager about all of those things. Like you should be very clear when you have a job offer about exactly what, like ask about 401k, ask about medical, ask about FSA. You can get a daycare FSA to help pay for childcare. There's all of these different benefits. They kind of will hide in there. This is money that you could be using, and you're right that it compounds. And if the
Yeah,
company's matching, that can be so valuable for your retirement.
it's so valuable. It is fantastic. Sarah, gosh, I feel like we could go on and on and on and talk about salaries. I'm hoping everyone is feeling excited, optimistic about their future, optimistic about their learning potential in the future, certifications, or just being able to talk to your boss, your grand boss about what are some options for you. We all picked an amazing profession, and I just think it's important for us to still feel that and be excited about it. So I am so delighted you were able to chat with us. I'm going to link all of Sarah's contact information in the show notes, including our old blog that we had where it talks about, shares a lot of information in there that I think you guys will really enjoy about how dietitians can make more money and about skill sets that are really helpful thinking into your future. So I will link to all of that. Is there anything else you want to share or have listeners connect with you in any particular way?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram and YouTube as Edge Clinical Nutrition. I do respond to Instagram DMs. So if you have a specific question, I love to get questions. So please message me on Instagram if you have a question. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm as Sara Griffin on LinkedIn. And then I can be found on the internet as edge-clinical.com. That's my website. So you can learn more about my company. I have some exciting sales and offers coming up this summer. And I'm enrolling for my CNSC exam study group, which is a 14-week guided study group with me as your instructor. It starts at the end of June for the fall exam.
If you guys are listening to this, she's having a flash sale
Hmm.
June 8th. Tell me if I'm saying this right. June 8th,
Yes.
26. So if you're listening to it as this gets thrown out at you, do take advantage of that flash sale. Thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Stacey. This is great.